regard. The other part about it, which just on a spreadsheet level is fantastic, is that it costs half as much because you're not building the whole school. You're only building the parts that they can't provide themselves. So that makes the school cheaper and also makes them far more likely to succeed because they're built by the community, and Room to Read is a facilitator and not a magic provider or a magic meal ticket from the sky. And the last one is that Room to Read has the courage and capacity to grow every year. Room to Read started in 2001 by John Wood. Yeah. This is John Wood. He's the founder and CEO of Room to Read. He's an ex-Microsoftie. He used to be a corporate exec for Microsoft's China division for expanding Office into overseas markets. And he founded this in 2001 and took a lot of the same lessons or kind of zeitgeist from Microsoft and just applied it to Room to Read, which is thinking big and tackling large problems. So he set out with big goals in 2001 and has accomplished a whole lot, and we'll get to that in a minute next time. And so that courage and conviction to think big carries on into what they're out to accomplish. So it's not just like, oh, we want to build this one little school here or there and then we're done. They're committed to a very large goal. And their core belief is that world change starts with educated children. And they have a very big, audacious goal as well. Next slide, please. And that is to help 10 million children gain a lifelong gift of education. 10 million children. This is one guy who had a dream and a vision to go out and educate the world's less fortunate and less opportunistic children in the world. And he wants to educate 10 million people, right? This is just one person. And he's making large strides for that vision, but with the help of the community in his NGO and through chapters like this one, who through grassroots efforts raise money to build these schools. And the results so far have been really impressive in just 5 years, and they continue to grow the impact of what his organization does. Next slide, please. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what some of the money can do. Now, I mentioned before that I'd like our goal to be able to build at least one school, and we'll see how much that costs in a little bit. So a girl scholarship in a country like Laos or Nepal or Sri Lanka is $250 a year. So that's not a whole lot of money in the Western world, but that will provide a girl a bicycle, books, uniform, fees associated with school, everything that she needs to go to school for a year. For $2,500 times 10, that essentially gives a girl a K-12 education in a developing nation. Like $2,500 now creates an entire family and an entire generation, and generations and generations of educated children, with those families valuing that education and gaining the benefits of that education as well, including the loss of mortality, developing nations, clean water, less disease, and I can go on and on about all of those things. Just $250 a year. Next slide, please. The library program is, I have two numbers up here, $2,000 and $8,000. $2,000 is what it costs to convert one room into a reading library. So that just fills it up with children's books. So that might be a room that already exists somewhere, it's not being used, it's been built all over the place. Just $2,000, just one laptop. $8,000 builds a library room itself and fills it with books. So that might be a small room somewhere where there's limited access to reading materials, and now that actually builds a facility and fills it with books. Next slide. And the books you might find there might be a school book, and that is $10,000. That's not just one book, but that's to develop, publish, illustrate, and print to press a children's book. Now, we've got several of them here. There's 4 of them back there. I invite you to look at those when the presentation is over. They're really cool books. They're written in local languages, and a lot of times they're written in bilingual or trilingual languages because the environments these kids live in are, there are multiple languages span these regions. So they're not written from a point of view of like, you're going to learn English, or you're going to learn French, or you're going to learn, insert your favorite language. They're all domestic, and they are created by the local community. And that covers the publishing costs. And then after that publishing cost, most of these books can be printed and developed and pressed for about $1 each. Right, so not very much. Next slide, please. Schoolroom, $14,000. This is my favorite one. It's a nice, pretty pink building. It's got fresh doorways on there, like the guys like putting the finishing touches on it. $14,000. That's a chunk of change, but think about what that buys as far as educating an entire community. Like what an inspiration it would be to be able to create an entire educated community for just $14,000. That school like that, they're educating anywhere from 100 to 300 kids a year for the lifetime of the school. Built by the community in the area that the school is built. So taught by locals. Right there, you don't have foreign advisors or anything like that coming in. It's all a community effort. And that school will be now a permanent structure that would continue to be a center for that community for decades to come. Next slide, please. Now we're getting a little bit more high-tech stuff. Language room, also about $14,000. This should be like teaching multiple languages to school children from an early age. So teaching, say, French and Vietnamese, or Cambodian and Laos, if those are two different languages. There are lots of different languages in some of the other regions, like around Sri Lanka and India. I'm not familiar with them, but these rooms are very popular, and the need for learning multiple languages is definitely great, and there are lots of motivated kids to learn them. Again, these are also placed only where there is a desire and a need for those sort of rooms. They don't just pop them down out of nowhere. The community runs them, the locals support and run the entire program themselves. The cost is about the same as a primary school, but it's a little bit more high-tech. You've got tapes and headphones and stuff like that. So a lot of that cost comes from hardware that can't necessarily be made locally. Next slide, please. Computer rooms is the fancy stuff. $16,000 for a computer room. So you see they're using the old CRTs. I don't think we have those around here anymore. But I remember the first time I used a computer, and I was completely enthralled by it, and using like basic operating systems, even from 4 or 5 years ago, which is the kind of stuff that's put on these things, or donated versions of various office applications. We use that kind of stuff all the time. We use it every day. But to a kid in a developing nation who has no access to that, that is a window of opportunity into a world of business and a world of education that they had never known before. And it's really, really magical. I remember the first time using a computer, I thought it was just fantastic. I'd stay up all night playing with various facets of new programs, and now I've become kind of numb to it by the fact of all the computer software that I use on a regular basis. But having that exposure for the very first time is very powerful, and it opens up a whole new world of possibilities, both in terms of education and economy, to kids who don't normally have access to that sort of thing. You can imagine if your whole worldview is based on a small village in the middle of jungle somewhere, or someplace with limited access to infrastructure, something like this is really, really amazing. Again, a little more expensive, but you have a much higher reward on that. So this is like maybe once you get to the end of your primary school years, you're playing with computers. Very popular, but also more expensive. Okay, next slide. So with that, this kind of gets back to the fact that there's room to grow, and Room 3 is still planning on expanding the number of schools that they're building, and expanding the number of scholarships that they offer, and expanding the number of countries that they work in. Right now they're working in 7 countries, all in Southeast Asia, Sri Lanka, Laos, Cambodia, to name a few. They'll be moving into South Africa and Central America this year and next year. So they're definitely expanding. There's some kids who all have their $250 scholarships for their cool little uniforms and bags. Next slide, please. So in 6 years, now I'm going to talk a little bit about the results and stuff that Room 3 has accomplished, and this is pretty cool. So 6 years only because it's now 2007, so this is just 5. Room 3 has accomplished a whole lot. So remember, we've gone from one guy with a vision to educate 10 million children in 2001, and this is how far we've got. Next slide, please. 230 schools in Dallas. 230 schools. That's about 50 or 60 a year. You figure each one of those is educating from 100 to 200 kids a year. In 6 years, do the math. It's a lot of kids. Next one. Over 2,300 girls on long-term scholarships. Long-term scholarship is the 10-year scholarship program. So that's K through 12. That's 2,300 families who will now have a future of education and the value of education for all of their children. Because there's not a mother out there who once has an education will not teach that to her children and make that important in their lives. Next slide. 2 million books.